We are going to build this table. This design we call the fine vine table, and I think you're going to see why. We start by figuring out how high we want the tabletop to be when it is finished and what size we want that surface area to be on top. And then based on that, we make a list. We call it a cut list of every piece of steel we're going to need to make this table base. The table base is going to be made out of steel. The tabletop is going to be made out of wood. Now that we've cut out all the pieces of tube steel that we need to make this table frame, I am assembling them and tacking them together. You can see I have a speed square there with these pieces of tube clamped to it to make sure that I'm getting these at 90 degrees to each other. Once I have it all clamped down good and tight, checked my measurements, then I come in with the welder and I tack it in place. Now that it's all tacked, I am doing the final pass weld on the top side. The name of the game for this is a lot of clamps, because that is a lot of heat that goes into a weld. And if you've ever worked with metal, you know this. If you haven't, this will be interesting. There is so much heat that goes into that metal, it will actually cause the metal to move, and it can cause that joint to open or close depending on where you're putting the heat. That's why I have it clamped down all over the place on the table. I want it to stay square. In this case, this is like a three-sided rectangle. That fourth side just isn't there. If the fourth side were in there, it would hold those ends of those other tubes equal distance pretty easily. But since it's not there, those ends of those tubes are going to want to come together when I weld the inside corners. And you can see, despite all that clamping, they did move in a little bit, and so I'm simply opening them back up again. All right, now I'm going to blend the welds on these sides. I want these to be smooth. This table design, you're not going to see the welds except fillet welds on inside corners. Blending really is an art. It may not seem as hard as welding, but there's definitely an art to it, and it's pretty close to the art of welding, I would say. You want to keep this flat disc as flat as possible. You don't want to make low spots. Low spots, especially on thin tube like this, are hard to fill in with weld. And if you have to come back and keep adding all that heat and weld to a piece, you're going to deform it and end up with other problems. So you want to get as much as you can in your first pass, and what I have found after welding lots and lots and lots of steel tubing is that you almost want to be just a touch hotter than what you would normally want to be. But you don't want to dawdle whatsoever, and you definitely don't want to weave. You want to get your puddle. As soon as you get your puddle, that little piece of molten metal, you want to just travel and head with it. If you get all your settings right, you'll get a weld that you don't have to come back and fill in little craters, and that is the goal. I'm going to build two of these three-sided rectangles, if you will, for this table. Here's the layout. This table would be laying on its back side right now. The three-sided rectangles are going to go on the floor and under the tabletop respectively. And again, just think of this like another three-sided rectangle, only it's got some 3D to it. And so I'm using ratchet straps, clamps, speed squares, and whatever it takes to keep these open ends equal distance from each other. If I had two more stretchers running across the top, that would be much easier again. But that's not the design of this table. We want that open look to it. And so I'm taking extra care to make sure those don't close too much. Now those inside corner welds, those are called fillet welds, those are going to be final. I don't want to have to grind those much, really at all. I just want to come in and be able to sand off any spatter that's near them. So I'm taking care to get those nice and smooth and perfect. Okay, let's check the measurements on this. Top to bottom, side to side. And this one needs to open up just a little bit. So we're doing that first. And then we'll open up the other one, the other side of that same one. So we're getting a little bit on each side. I want the cross measurements to be the same as well. So I'm trying to open up that equal amounts. I don't want it all to be one-sided. Now I'm going to cut out some plugs for the ends of these tubes. I'm using a magnet to hold that in position while I tack it in place. Once it's tacked in place, I will do the final welds all the way around. Jordan's making another table over there. That is called the modern rectangle table. That is a pretty neat design too, and a video is coming out on that. So make sure you stay tuned if you want to see that table design. Now I'm coming back with a resin fiber disc and I'm sanding these tubes flat. You can see I'm keeping that disc nice and flat because we want this tube to look like it was made this way. You don't want to see the seam and you don't want to see any sanding marks. Low spots, high spots, they're going to refract the light differently on the finish and draw your eye to that area. If everything is smooth, you're not even going to notice the seams. Now we are adding the vines, if you will, to the table. This is 3/8 inch round bar. We're running it through the tubing roller to give it a radius. And now we're just matching up the table base to see, is that a good radius? I'm gonna roll this one a little bit tighter so that we have a couple different radiuses going. I want this table to have sort of a nature element to it as well. I don't want it to be, too rigid or symmetrical. I want it to have some symmetry, but I want to, have each radius be a little bit different so it has some of the randomness of nature. And getting all these tacked in here the way we decided they would look good. I'm doing 4 vines on each side of this table. We could do 2 or 3 or 5, 7, 8, however many we wanted to fit in here. This is our table design. We can customize it. The frame is already there. We don't even need these for support. These are pretty much strictly ornamental. Normally I would weld something like that off with a TIG welder probably so that I had less blending and sanding to do. But this table is a model for a class we are teaching where people are going to build their own tables like this, and those students are only going to have access to MIG welders. So I decided, I would do it with the MIG welder and I would blend it from there just to show what is possible with a MIG welder. Fortunately, maybe I didn't get footage of that because that is a long, tedious process and there's really nothing to do but to do it. Meanwhile, Steven goes into the wood shop. He's going to do a glue up to get Walnut the size he wants for the top of this table. Now watch the way he spreads this glue. I bet he takes his pinky finger to it. Look at that. How did I guess? That's the way luthiers do it, so they keep the glue off their thumb and forefinger when they're working with the instruments. I've never seen Steven work on an instrument, but he's got the luthier finger when it comes to glue ups. And now that he's got this glued together, he is setting it on top of the table and drawing where he wants his accent lines to go through. These should be kind of viney since this is a fine vine table, so they should resemble a vine and have a pleasant curve to them. Once he's got those lines roughed in, he's going to cut one out on the bandsaw. All that work of putting those 2 pieces of walnut together, and now they're separate again. Oh well. He's running some strips of maple through the planer. He hot glued them to this piece of MDF so they'd stay in place while he planes them to his ideal thickness. Or maybe thinness, we should say. Look how flexible that is. And now he's going to stick one of those into that tabletop and he's going to glue that tabletop back together again. Once that's in, he's going to cut the tabletop apart again. My goodness, he just keeps doing this. He goes like 1 step forward and then 1 step back. Will he ever finish this? Now that's a strange looking top. And he glues his other accent line in right there. Now he's got some double-sided tape on the table frame and he's got a piece of MDF on top and he is running a flush cut router bit around there running his bearing on the table frame so it cuts the MDF to exactly the size he needs the tabletop. Now that he's got the tabletop glued up with both accents in it, he is planing it down to final dimension. And now that that's all smooth and nice, he's going to put the MDF template that he made, he's going to double-sided tape that to the actual tabletop. Cut off the extra on the tabletop and then trim it with a flush trimmer out of it. This will make the tabletop the exact same size as the template, since the template's the exact same size as the table frame top. This tabletop should fit the frame exactly. Now he did a roundover pass on the top side of the tabletop, which was actually on the bottom side, if you see what I mean. And now, time to final sand. He's final sanding that radius by hand. And now it's time for a coat of Osmo oil. Look at that grain. That is pretty. Look at how bright that maple is compared to that dark walnut. That's just gorgeous. All right, now he's drilling some holes in the bottom of the tabletop, mind you. See how the radius is facing down right now? Then using the drill press to keep them nice and straight and threading in some inserts. These will take a machine threaded screw. That table base is back from powder coat. Look at it shine. And you can see the welds on those vines are blended into the table frame now. This table served as a model for a class we were teaching on how to build a fine pine table. Students got to build their very own fine pine table like this one. And then this particular table went on to the county fair where it won a blue ribbon. And now it is for sale by Brothers Fab Shop. Whoever buys this to grace their home will also get the blue ribbon that goes with it. We are a welding and fabrication job shop. And we also build fine furniture and teach welding on occasion. If you like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe. One of the neat things about being a job shop is you never know for sure what it is you're going to be doing next. We get a wide variety of interesting and fun projects that come in. So if you want to see what's next, make sure you subscribe.